Monday, July 2nd, 2019, of the Norton Charter Commission. Is anybody taping this session other than Shane? Okay, we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, once again, while we have guests who have humored us and come to talk with us, we will break with the agenda and go out of order. First on the docket is Ms. Estelle Flett. She's the Director of Veteran Services. Estelle, we very much thank you for your time. We understand you didn't have to be here, and we appreciate you making the effort and the time to come and speak with us. It shouldn't be too terrible. Half an hour maximum, I'm hoping. I promise none of us bite. If you just want to start, tell us about your position, how long you've been here, and just tell us just a brief outline of what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. As a veterans officer, I obviously have to be a veteran. And just a little bit about my background. I had 28 years in the Army Reserve. I retired in 2010 after 2 deployments in support of Iraqi freedom. I have a degree in management and doing what I love, taking care of veterans. I've been with the town now 6 years as of August 9th. I feel like I blinked. It's been nonstop. Prior to that, it had been part of a district, so there was never a veterans officer here full-time. Few people thought I'd be bored. I haven't had one day yet. So being in the office, it's continuous, it's unexpected, it's a reactive position. You can plan all day. You know, I usually come in, I'll have one thing in the middle of my desk, and by the end of the day, it's still there. So everything else is kind of interrupted. So not a bad thing. I'd like to sum it up and say that I'm human services for the town's veterans. On the last census, there was, I believe, just under 900. And those are those individuals who actually report, you know, their veteran, being a veteran. So I don't ever want to, at any point during this, undermine my office because I'm one person. So I whatever sells it, please ask the questions and probe. My position is mandated somewhat by the state because of Chapter 115, Mass General Law, Chapter 115, which is a needs-based tested program of financial and medical assistance for indigent veterans and their dependents. I like to say that it's simply more of a program, a state program that is a godsend for many local veterans because it helps, especially for those on fixed incomes, you know, make ends meet by getting reimbursed for medical and some ordinary benefits as well. But it's a program that we're the only state in the country that has it. It's one of those things that Mass does the best when taking care of veterans. So that, because of our population, my position is a full-time position, again, mandated by the state. To this point, last fiscal year, they added an admin with 18 hours in my office. Greatly needed. We're trying to work out the kinks. Right now, I've just had someone who's transitioned in from another position in Town Hall. Veterans are unique. It's not town government. It's not, there are certain aspects of the admin position, yes, turnovers or doing accounts payable, but at the same time, it's working with veterans, and that changes with each veteran that comes into the office. So there's a big learning curve right now, and we're trying to get beyond that. I'm hopeful, but working with veterans is a little different when it comes to human services. Because of Chapter 115, that's a monthly benefit. They get reimbursed for medical premiums, insurances, and such, and anything in between. The big part of that job is that the state reimburses the town 75%. So my checks and balance with that is ongoing, because every expense I have, I get authorized through the state to make sure that they're going to reimburse it. There is Mass Code Regulation 108 CMR that gives me guidelines to let me know just what I can reimburse and what I can't reimburse. It's not specific, often has a lot of what looks like gray area, so it's a lot of chatter back and forth with the state Department of Veteran Services that I do on a daily basis. But ultimately, at the end of the month, I reimburse. Currently, I have 31 clients under that program. I've had as many as 45. The program itself is intended to be the last resort. So it's my job to make sure that I do the due diligence to make sure they couldn't have gotten Mass Health or Mass Health buy-in or applied for Social Security. All of those programs are things that they generally need my assistance with. So although I can come up with it, I'm usually helping them fill out the forms. A lot of instances I physically go to the Social Security office or do home visits because they can't get out and make things happen for them. This job has not been I can't come in and say that I'm only going to do this today. I just can't tell you the diversity of it. I can do anything from guiding someone, with Chapter 115, or where do I get a, ID card, and then I go into the VA. I do a lot of federal claims, which is helping veterans with service-connected disabilities get compensation. I help them file for VA health care. I work a lot with burial in the national cemeteries, making arrangements, helping families through that. A lot of work with widows. I do a number of claims for aid and attendance, which is a federal program that more often than not helps seniors supplement their income when they're in assisted living. Long, drawn-out process. Families are often inundated with paperwork that they don't know which direction to go in. There are a lot of companies out there, you may hear them on commercials, that advertise that they'll help you through the process for a fee. We like to get the word out that veterans officers in each town will help with that at no cost. But it's still a long, daunting process. 6 to 9 months is an average. A claim like that, assisting someone, can take multiple meetings, emails, phone calls. It's one of those that drags you down a little bit. So the outcome is not always what we hope for, but it is a benefit that they're entitled to. All right, so I talked about Chapter 115 and then the VA. And that's just like my world. I'm inundated with it. I could go into the weeds with it. All I can tell you is everything is time consuming. There isn't a person that walks in my office that doesn't spend 25 minutes. And usually those are the walk-ins that I can't seem to stop. And I try to, control that, but it is something, everyone's got a story. There isn't a veteran out there that doesn't have a story to tell. And if you don't listen to it, you're not gonna, you just have to. So that's a little bit pulse of my day. And it can go in any direction. So I'm a very reactive person. So when I have to plan for things like this, it doesn't work. If you came in my office and I had to fire it off, I could do it for you. So I'm just putting that out there.
We appreciate your flexibility.
It's built in, and I definitely want to give the office all the credit. It is a one-person office, but I think it does a lot of good for this town. The admin certainly helps. It would be wonderful in this for this office to also have an outreach worker that could work hand in hand with me to do some of the footwork. I do a fair amount of running around through town to different homes, frowned upon or not. It's just a reality. We have folks that can't get out. And although I have 31 on the rolls right now, it can change in a day because I've helped them find another resource that can benefit them, more than what they get from Chapter 115, whether it's a service-connected disability that comes through or not. But there are a lot of folks in this town that need services. Again, my clientele just happens to be veterans, and there's some more resources for them, not tons more, even though they sell it. There are a lot of benefits. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. It can be a crazy day.
Thank you very much for your service. I appreciate what you do and everything
My
you
honor.
do for in town, so thank you.
You report currently directly to the town manager?
Correct.
Okay. And you have one part-time staff, and are you comfortable with the level of autonomy that you have in your position?
I am,
Okay.
because of the diversity of what can come through the office at any day. I think it works great. My background as a first sergeant in the military left me to I had that autonomy, so I love it. It kind of has arrived with me.
Do you feel you have everything you need to do your job properly? And that goes to information technology. We talked a little bit about people and, you'd like a little bit more resources, but
Yeah, that always helps. Yes, currently I feel like I do. I work with VISMIS, which is a state program. That's how I communicate back and forth with Department of Veteran Services for authorization, any prior approvals. Yeah, so that works. I also work with VetraSpec, which has, I've only had that now just a little less than 2 years, which has been really great because it is a program that if you spend time with the veteran and you put in all of the information, when it comes time to fill out the forms, it quickly populates. So it eliminates. It's wonderful. So that has been a plus.
so you said your position is mandated by the state, so every town has a director of Veterans Affairs, Veteran Services?
Yes.
Similar to yours?
City or town, correct.
Okay.
And it's depending on full-time, part-time, based on population.
Okay.
I think one of your questions or suggested question was about the direction of the position itself.
Yeah.
Like, how do I see it evolving? Right now, the Department of Veteran Services continues to improve our positions by training. Just 3, actually, we've recertified now twice. And that's the first time in the history of veteran service officers was their certification. So they were given over $300,000 when they passed the Valor Act back in 2012 to provide training to veteran service officers to make sure that all cities and towns veterans were receiving or able to receive the same type of experience or knowledge. We have annual training with them once a year, as well as with my association twice a year. And they keep adding. It's all good stuff, but they keep adding, especially on the VA side. I'm probably everything but without the certification for national officer. I'm exaggerating just a little, but not much, because of what we do and support veterans that walk in our offices with VA claims, especially, and benefits.
So would you say from town to town, since you all have to have the same certifications and ongoing training, you probably wouldn't notice any difference from town to town other than maybe the level of staff? Is there any difference?
Yes, level of staff, but also, it's like everybody else. You can all have the same job, but it's what you bring to it. And that, so some of us might be more passionate than others Some might like grades more than others, and, you know, so, but in general, you should be able to get the same service in each town.
Okay. Have you seen any towns where things are structured differently that you might like to adopt?
No. And I just say that because I think one of the things out there, and I hate to even let it come out of my mouth, but they have put veteran service officers in some communities in with the Council on Aging. Although Beth and I do work closely because we're human services. If she identifies a veteran, she sends them over, and we kind of go back and forth and support one another. But I find that being in town hall allows me another, it's the foot traffic that comes in. You're not going to have as many young veterans just walking through the Council on Aging, just fact. Some people stay away from it even if, for whatever reason, not in a negative. I think there are a lot of good things that happen there, but I think this just avails me to all of the population.
Would you say it's also super important that the veteran know that they're speaking to another veteran and not having to go through Council on Aging that may not be the services that?
And that is, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes you get somebody in the first few minutes of conversation, and it helps. And as soon as you identify, I have that gender thing going on because I'm a female, so when they come in and they're like, and I said, no, I'm a veteran. Oh, you are? Yeah. And so we kind of go back and forth with that banter. What did you do? What was your rank? And then as soon as we get that out, we're settled and
Once
we
you've
move on.
established your credentials? Yeah.
But it is important, and it's those few minutes, and there are a lot of people that it takes a lot for them to come into the office, period. So I'd rather be able to be in my office location with everything set up and the resources, because it's usually, I work a lot with the assessors because of the abatement,
Oh, okay.
that, and also with the town clerk for those coming in with welcome home bonuses, so.
Does anybody have any questions specifically about the position of the department? Okay. If you don't mind, we're just going to ask you just some general opinion questions. What do you like about Norton's town government?
I'm not well-studied in other governments. I'm just putting that out there. So
Do you live
I
in
don't
Norton?
think it's working. I
Sorry.
do live in Norton.
Okay.
Yes. I don't think what we have is currently working. Not for everyone. Town meetings are, I think it is time for a change, so hopefully you'll come up with good suggestions. Whatever can best represent, the town as a whole. I know it's kind of weak, but I'm not well-studied in that area.
That's okay.
Speak on it.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Can you speak to about, like specifically about town meeting? What is it that you find are the challenges?
I just don't feel they're well-attended
Okay.
by everybody. Obviously, it's like anything else. If you have something on the agenda, everyone is there for that, but I just don't see everyone coming out for them. And people that I talk about, they're like, just not interested. They just don't want to be a part of it, which is a sad part, but.
So in your population that you work with, you feel like it's not representing them specifically very well? Or is it just in general in the town?
I'd say in general in town, yeah.
Do you find the people that you work with are interested in town government? Do they?
Yes.
Okay.
Everyone's got an opinion. Don't walk by my office on any good day. That's the other side. We need that confidentiality, but yeah, no.
Yeah.
So we have fun conversations, for sure.
Okay. I know you mentioned, I had asked specifically, are there things you like? I know you've mentioned town meeting and things you don't like. Are there any changes in town government specifically that you'd like to see? If you've given any thought, I know you said you weren't.
No, I mean, style of government, town meeting versus something else, no, I don't know, but things within town, definitely. Human resources, think that was something that went by the way back in the, 90s and thereabouts, but I think it's needed. I think we could really benefit from that. Just if they were full, someone said part-time, I'm like, don't even do it. You need someone full-time. They need a staff. To take benefits out of the treasurer's office I think a human resource, I think many levels and different jobs that they have, it's not just personnel hiring, but I think it's also working with benefits and training, and there's some type of, mentoring that's taken out of the hands of just one person who is dealing with everything else. I think it's greatly needed.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Flett?
I don't have any specific questions. I think you did a really good job explaining some stuff up front, and you really answered some of the questions that I had written down and was thinking, so thank you for that. And I'd also like to thank you for your service. Past and this time.
Well, if I didn't, because I know I want to walk away if you don't think my office is important. I'll keep going and I will settle down and make meaningful statements, but.
There is no question.
I think it is, it's an important, and I'm glad that the town embraces it the way that they do. I feel like I do get the right support from Board of Selectmen, town manager, just offices within.
And young Mayor Norton.
Yes, Peter. I will end on the one other item, IT. So if I didn't, I know I did not say that, but I don't want to let that go. I don't think we should have to wait till a Tuesday or Thursday to have a computer issue or to even talk about developing something. It would be nice to have someone on site that could help come in and resolve something or make us aware that it's already on the software. That, and I hope with your committee, Charter Commission, to make change and improve. I'd like to say I think Norton is great. We have a lot of humble, frugal, and proud people. I shared it earlier, but we're to fault. We do and survive on so little and make it happen that I think it's caught up with the town a little bit. And now we have to, just embrace it, get some of these departments so we're too deep instead of one person. Or if they, where there's extra staff needed. We have a lot of folks in town that, my office certainly does human services, Council on Aging does, but we're strapped. It's every day. It's there. It doesn't go away. And there are a lot of people we have yet to reach. So that's my worry, that we're out there helping folks who are otherwise isolated or just, unaware of what resources we could help them with. So I hope that we can bring them to a professional town hall where they see offices and options and feel comfortable, reaching out.
Is there one last question.
Yeah.
Is there a waiting list to get on? Are you currently at capacity? Is there a waiting list to obtain services, or is it just the matter of that people may not be aware of them and you have to do outreach to go and find them?
Not being aware of it.
Okay.
There are a lot of people that have been in town, I had an individual, when they come in and they're 70 years old and they've been in Norton all their life and didn't realize that, Chapter 115 existed. And it's a hidden secret. It's a gem. The years I didn't, the reserves, maybe because we were still active and had other resources, but I didn't know it existed either. So it's just trying to get the word out for that. And like I said, it is the last resort, so there are a lot of other resources out there that we could help with. But just trying to get people in to the office, whether it's word of mouth or just sharing it. I always tell people when they come in, please let them know. But I have no waiting list for Chapter 115.
Okay.
If 150 people showed up,
You have 150 clients.
I would just be back to the board asking for a little more money.
Okay.
The good thing is we get 75% back, so that's a great thing.
That is great. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for your
No.
time.
Again,
Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
very
Can I
much, appreciate
Follow
it.
up with me if I miss something?
We
or-
absolutely will. If there's something, you realized you didn't get to tell us and you think it's important, just send us a quick email.
Okay, I will.
That'd be great.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hi, Chief Clark. You're up.
Hello, good evening.
Hi there.
How are you?
Great, thank you. We also appreciate your time. We know you're busy, and probably this is not where you wanted to be on a Monday night, but we do very much appreciate your time. Again, I'm hoping to keep within a half an hour or so. Some of the similar questions, not exactly, your role's a little bit different. I don't think does anybody need an explanation of what Chief Clark does? If you could possibly just tell us a little bit about your staff bench strength and how many people that you currently employ and have reporting to you.
Sure, so we have, right now we have 31 full-time police officers. We have one full-time support staff, my assistant. We have one part-time records clerk at 12 hours a week. And we have 8 special police officers, which are part-time, kind of an on-call reserve basis. We're funded for 33 police officers. We're down 2 right now, one from a retirement, one from a transfer. So we handle about 17,000 calls a year. We have 4 shifts made up of 5 to 6 officers per shift, a sergeant and then patrolmen. We also have a detective division, which we have 5 people in detectives. They handle the whole police department handles a wide variety of calls for service, but in particular, the detectives, they handle court prosecution, the sex offender registry, firearms, some portions of firearms licensing, evidence. We also have 2 police officers assigned as problem-orientated police officers, which is kind of a new thing over the last few years that we put together to handle calls for service that are recurring and also do follow-ups for heroin and opioid addiction. The command staff is currently made up of 2 lieutenants and 6 sergeants, and one of the sergeants is a school resource officer. We hope to be adding a second school resource officer at some point in time this year when everybody's back and trained.
How often does the regional emergency planning group meet, and what is the purpose of that group?
Regional, what specifically do you mean?
Within the annual town report, there's a group, and it's made up of the fire chief, police chief, town manager. So I'm guessing not that.
We kind of meet as needed, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's not, the fire chief is the emergency management director. There is a deputy director,
Yeah.
which is a civilian, non-paid position.
It's like the health agent is on it, conservation.
Yeah,
Superintendent.
we've been doing actually
and
more
Wheaton
with,
is on it as well?
We've been actually doing more with department head meetings.
Okay.
We meet monthly now,
Okay.
which is actually, it's probably recently new in the last year, but it's a great way to, it's got roundtable discussion on what's going on. It's
Okay.
a really good way of an hour's time to inform everybody of new things.
You report directly to
Town
town
manager.
manager? Okay. And do you feel you have enough autonomy in your role?
Yeah, I've been very lucky. I've worked for 2 town managers, and they've both been great to work with.
Okay. Do you have access to everything you need in order to do your job well? Do you feel your role has adequate backup
Yes.
in terms of information, technology, people? You have everything you need?
Well, a few things is we're looking at changing our command staff right now. Kind of some of the questions you sent me, I wrote a couple notes down. A lot of departments have deputy chiefs who are looking at moving to a deputy chief position in our command staff. You mentioned IT, and I know Estelle mentioned it too on her thing. We have 4 hours on Tuesdays, 4 hours on Thursdays for the entire town. It's really kind of ridiculous that we don't have a full-time IT person.
Yep.
Like every single other town around. MX does a good job in, they're receptive, but, just for every single department that's in town. It's just kind of crazy.
Right. We're hearing a lot of that. Are there any, well, I know we are moving towards regionalized,
Communication center.
exactly. And I'm wondering, are there any other, so that's a good thing. Hopefully there'll be some economies achieved there and sharing of information, which I think is important. Are there any other trends that you are seeing on the horizon or hearing about, things that might affect your position or department in general?
Well, it's like police work is ever changing. Chief Keene, when he was chief, and he's still today, he always says there's nothing more constant than change, and it's 100% true. I mean, if you asked me 10 or so years ago if I thought that mental health and the opioid crisis were going to hit us, I wouldn't probably see that coming. Certainly there's a reform now about criminal justice. There's marijuana that's become legalized. These are all things that are affecting us. Training is ongoing, use of force, criminal justice reform. The firearms licensing in 2012, when Newtown happened, we got inundated with firearms licensing after that. And, that's coming around again because everybody that got firearms licensing in 2012 and 13 are re-upping now. We were actually one of the worst in the state to process firearms because we only had one person doing it. We have changed the way we do things. But, in the future, we probably should look towards, we have a part-time records clerk. We probably should look to increase that to 35 hours. 20 years ago, that was a full-time position, believe it or not. But we've cut it, and, it's one of the things we do well here is we cut things and then not replace them. The public records law, which that person handles, that law changed about 2 years ago. You talk about transparency, like there's a lot more access to public records, but we need that go-to person to get those out. And you can just imagine that when the records law changes and there's more access to it, that means more people are going to request records. So, 12 to 15 hours a week just isn't going to cut it. Technology, we struggle with technology. You mentioned the IT, but even just, in town government, technology is always changing, from computers to investigations. It's something that we need to keep up with. We're doing the best we can, but we just purchased a Cellbrite machine last year through Capital. It's pretty pricey. It's a $15,000 machine, and to keep up with technology that costs, it's very difficult. So I don't know what marijuana legalization is going to exactly bring to Norton as far as when it comes to town. We will be affected by it. We'll have quality of life issues that we'll get calls about. I'm sure we'll have, drug driving, which we've already seen. So.
Which means they have no right to feel conditions. They don't have to report, but they can't.
I think one of your questions too is, what do you see that other towns, the function is structured differently? We are moving to that regional communication center. I think that'll be very beneficial for quality control purposes. The towns of Mansfield and Foxborough merged in July 1st, and within the first few weeks, they're already answering calls quicker. They're getting information out there faster, and there's that quality control reviewing calls that I think will be beneficial. That is tough for us to do here on a regular basis. So we're moving towards that next year. And with Easton, and there's a lot of towns that are getting out of civil service. We're a civil service community. I think it's something that we have to have a conversation about at some point in time. That's a major trend that's happening right now. So,
Could I follow up on that? Could you explain that a little?
So we're a civil service community. So we followed for hiring and promotions. We follow civil service law.
Mm-hmm.
So. I'll give you an example. So, we're talking about going to a deputy chief position. I have to put something together. I have to have the town manager sign it, and I have to forward it to civil service. That was 3 weeks ago. When we go to hire somebody full-time, I have to requisition a list. Well, let me go back. There has to be an exam given, which was given in March. The exam just came out. The results just came out last Friday. I still don't know what those results are. I won't get them till September. So you can see that, there's a 6-month period of time that from an exam given to when it comes out, that it's where we could give our own exam, and within a day or two we'll have those results. that's, I think, from my position as chief, that's what I see as frustrating for civil service purposes. I mentioned there's towns getting out of it: Millis, Walpole, Norwood, Westwood, North Attleboro. I know there's other conversations, I don't want to mention the names, but within the area, there's other conversations. And I guess I get the feeling like if we don't get out of it, we're going to get stuck with it at some point in time, and it's just not very beneficial. So when I go to hire a police officer, I have to requisition a list. I have to go through a set ways that just are archaic, I guess. So, and I think we could do a better job on our own, if you will. So what would that require? That would require, some conversation with the unions, and then a article on a town meeting ballot to have it taken out. It doesn't, I don't say this lightly because it's not the first time that it's been talked about. It was talked about 21 years ago, and it went to town meeting and it was voted down, but I think it was kind of done the wrong way, and I think timing is everything. I don't think it was the right timing. So it's just my 2 cents about that.
Just a quick question is, because I'm not sure what the civil service stuff all means, but is it driven by the union agreements, or is it driven by state requirements or town requirements? Like, what drives that difference?
So years ago, probably back in the 50s, I forget the exact year, Norton voted at town meeting to become a civil service community. Because of that, we're now a civil service community that we follow the rules of the Human Resource Division for Civil Service, Chapter 31,
So it's
under
a
the Mass General Laws.
Mass General Law designation.
Another thing that, outside of the IT person, that, the police department could always use is a mechanic. We have quite a few cruisers. Some go down, we ship them out because the highway department doesn't have enough personnel to do it. There's one town mechanic, and, if he's out doing other jobs for the highway department, he's not always eligible or able to work on our cruisers, so it becomes more of a cost factor, and just having the cruiser sidelined for a longer period of time. I just throw that out there. It's not something that's necessarily on the radar, but I do hear officers, say that frequently too, that we could use it for like a full-time town mechanic.
So I'm sorry, could you just clarify, going back to the civil service community, do you feel that there is a support for moving away from that now, or support to
I
keep
think there's
it?
more openness towards it. I can't speak because, we've been having just general discussions about it, but I think there's a little more openness. I think, when it happened 21 years ago, it was a top-down approach where it was kind of pushed down and it was no conversations with the right people.
Okay.
But it seems to be working in other places that have left it, so. And there's a lot, there's obviously a lot more to it, but it's just, something that I think at some point in time we should look at in the near future.
Are there any other questions specifically related to the position of the department? If you don't mind, if you could just weigh in with your opinion on town government, what you think of it, what you like
Sure.
and what you don't like?
Well, obviously the government works. I don't know if it works necessarily well all the time. I think that the open town meeting itself is archaic, not town meeting together, just the opening form. I don't know how you can plan for it. You don't know if you're going to have 100 people or 10,000 people. Like, I don't know how you can plan for that if there's 10,000 registered voters who are all able to come to town meeting. And that's always been kind of an issue. I think from my end, it's difficult sometimes, and maybe even a little frustrating to try to educate people on everything that we do about the budget process, and you can repeat it over and over. But there's new people that come in, and it just it's often difficult. I don't know. I know that there are other forms of government, whether it's a representative town meeting or a town council, that would probably work better. I don't have a choice on either one, but I think either one of those would be better.
Is there anything?
I just don't know how you can have a plan for town meeting. It seems to be kind of, I don't want to say special interest, but I guess that's kind of what it's run by, is special interests. And if there's a hot topic, you pack the meeting. If there's not, nobody shows up. So.
Is there anything we didn't ask you that you'd like to share with us?
I don't think so.
Okay. I very much appreciate your time and your service.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again for
Thank you.
coming. Mr. Flaherty, you're up. Again, thank you. Very much appreciate your time. I know you're not really where you wanted to be, but we do appreciate it.
I'm always in this place.
Your questions are
Over
going
there?
to,
Right, I know. It's weird sitting, I haven't sat at this end of the table in a long time, so.
we do appreciate your time. Your questions are going to be a little bit different, and I just wanted to throw out to the rest of the commission. We had a set list of questions that I kind of started with, and then other people kind of chimed in with theirs. If you asked a question with the last Board of Selectmen panel that we met with, please ask it again. And I made notes of Dave Heaney's and David Wren's questions, so I'll get to those as well, just kind of so we have a similar base from which to review the answers would be great. We're going to start with the really easy one. What do you like about Norton Town government and why?
I like that it is, everybody gets to vote on every little thing. You know, I think that there's an assumption that the Board of Selectmen have such far-reaching power and latitude, but really, everything is voted for at town meeting, and I think that we do have a participation issue when it comes to attendance at town meeting, but everybody gets a chance to vote on everything that's going to impact their taxes, services, their day-to-day life in the community.
Are there things that you do not like about, you know, you mentioned the participation is definitely an issue.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I think it can be frustrating when we spend, I think what people don't see and what they may not appreciate is the amount of time volunteers spend at meetings and discussing these issues at hand and come to some sort of consensus. We have public hearings that nobody shows up to, and then we go to town meeting and all of a sudden it gets loaded by the special interest of one side or the other, and things become difficult. Or we get there and debate it for 3 hours on something completely unanticipated until Dave Haney or Mr. Schleicher moves the question, or Keith Silva.
Are there any changes specifically that you would like to see?
No, I mean, I'm really kind of agnostic toward the changes. I mean, the government is what it is, and I do think that, you know, if we had a different format of government, it may be easier to get the tax increases that the town desperately needs. That being said, some people feel that they can't afford it, feel that they're not justified, and we take away their ability to vote if we do change the format of the government. Or they can vote for a representative, but for their vote on the actual issue.
How about specifically, although this was Denise's question, but I'll steal it.
I don't remember.
How do you feel about term limits?
So I do typically am very much for a term limit. The issue is someone's going to run. And we have all sorts of vacancies on various boards, and you know, when you have people who are continually willing to step up and donate their time for the better of the town, and they can bring a certain level of experience. Like, you know, we just had Paul Helmer step away from the Finance Committee, which is a tremendous loss of institutional and governmental knowledge. Tom DeLuca is still there, but at some point he'll also step away. So, you know, term limits, agreed. If you have a multitude of people who are willing to participate and willing to volunteer their time, great. But barring that, you know, you're either forcing someone to run that really isn't interested in doing so, or you're getting someone appointed that, you know, may not have won the favor of the constituency.
Are there any boards that you appoint that you feel should be elected, and vice versa?
No, again, I'm always very careful when discussing taking away somebody's ability to vote on something. I think that the Water and Sewer Commission could use some, you know, maybe an appointed role where they're accountable to another elected body. Because again, it's not a very attractive post to run for. So you're not, and it requires tremendous expertise. So for somebody, you know, in our town of roughly 18,000 people, to have 3 people who are qualified to do that, where it's not, you know, well, let's set a 2 or 3 term limit, get them there, they just figure out what the heck they're doing toward the end of it, and now we're going to retrain somebody. It's difficult from that, so I do think that of all, the Water and Sewer Commission would be the ones that I think should be appointed.
Do you feel there's an appropriate level of checks and balances between the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager?
Absolutely.
Are there any areas, processes, functions where you wish you had more authority?
No, none that I can think of. You know, there's a good communication between the board and the town manager. I mean, obviously, there was a little bit of some confusion around the old Reed and Barton facility and some misunderstandings there. But, you know, I've worked with, similar to the chief, two town managers since I've been in town, either on the Finance Committee or on the Board of Selectmen, and they've both been very good. Mike is about as communicative as anybody that I've worked with.
Do you have access to the information you need to be able to do your job well?
Yeah. I mean, again, we can get anything that we're looking for. Sometimes it's not always apparent what we should be asking for, because, you know, we do meet once a week, and, you know, business of the town happens over the course of that week, and sometimes something might seem minor, and, you know, you might want to have a better look at that. But, I mean, if we ask the town manager for it, it's generally provided in a timely turnaround.
In your experience in the position specifically as Board of Selectmen, are there any instances you can think of where, in having to refer to the charter, you found it lacking information or ambiguous in some way?
No, I mean, I think that the charter probably could use certainly some updating. I mean, I find it to be, there are areas where it's gets down to a very granular level, and others where it just kind of sweeps on by. And so I think that there could be some, you know, the roles of the town manager is exceptionally defined. I think it's approximately 3 pages in the charter, but there's hardly a mention of the superintendent. And, you know, there's 70% of our town spend, and it mentions the school committee in that, but I think that there should be some equal mention as to, you know, what the expectations and the roles and the duties are there as well.
Are there any other examples like that?
No,
Where you
none that come
found-
to mind off the top of my head. I am very interested to see what you folks come back with over the course of your interviews and your studies and your deliberations.
Any areas within the charter where you found it too restrictive or too not restrictive or too lenient?
No, well, so, I mean, the world is changing, and, you know, I think it's come up a couple times where postings for town meetings and for various community events where it's on the bulletin boards here and in a newspaper, which most people don't get anymore. So people
That's the Peter Channel.
plus the Peter Channel every night. That's where I get all my information. I think people don't necessarily know where to look, but I also don't think that they really go out to look, and then all of a sudden they get hit with, you know, well, this is going to impact me, and so then there's the mistrust that comes. So I do think that we should look at having posting available on the town website.
Okay. Anything that was in the charter that you read that wasn't in line with expectations when you went looking for something?
No, not at all. Although I have to say, I don't have many expectations when I'm going to look at the town chart. Not the most exciting read in the world.
Any processes or committees that you think could or should be either consolidated or split?
No, I mean, I think that there are some that lack, because they're not exciting roles, they lack adequate participation, you know, difficulty getting quorums. So I would like to see, and this renewed interest in town government,
Yeah.
I think will help that. And just hope it sustains, because I've been was on Finance Committee for 11 years and have been on the Board of Selectmen for 2.5. And I can tell you there are meetings that have made my eyes and ears bleed, and just like they feel like they go on in perpetuity. I'm sure you guys are kind of getting a little taste of that now. And it's hard. It's hard showing up every week, and you have other things to do. I've got 2 kids. I coach soccer. I've got a busy job. So there are things that pull that, but you still have to find the people who are dedicated to the cause and the mission. And make sure that they do show, pay attention, and make good decisions. So not necessarily split or anything, but we just need to make sure we have adequate participation.
David Wren asked the question in the last group, do you think this is a tough town to approach or deal with in terms of development?
So, yes and no. I think that we missed a great opportunity a long time ago with John Scott Boulevard. That road is wide because it was meant for trucks, and it was meant for industrial and commercial development. We went residential at the time, which kind of hamstrung us. And so we can be tough to deal with in terms of development because it's limited. There's not a lot that you can do. We have this Leonard Street industrial park that's going in Blue Star, I believe they're calling it. So that's our last opportunity because, again, we're relying on residential tax base to fund our entire budget, which, again, it's been talked about ad nauseum, but residential occupancy puts a strain on the system. Ambulances, schools, police, and they're around 24/7. Businesses, they have definite opening hours, and they use less of the infrastructure. So I think that out of necessity we became a little bit difficult, but I mean we've had a number of projects successfully brought into town through TIFs, which again that's a good way to. I mean that's very business friendly.
Yep.
So I don't find that we're difficult at all. Planning board, with the drive-throughs, and I mean, there's certain things that they feel is character of the town, which may make it a little bit more difficult to attract the people, but I do think we're a business-friendly town. Especially because, we have a blended tax rate as well. So it is very business-friendly.
Let's see, anybody have any questions? I'm going to ask the Dave Heaney question. Are there any questions that we didn't ask you that you thought we would ask and you wanted to talk about?
No, I think you guys have done a good job asking questions. Again, I'm interested to see what your version of the charter is when you come back. I think there are a lot of things in here that would be, something to look at and board appointments and who does what. I think there's some things there that could certainly use some attention.
Okay. Anything in particular you'd like to?
Well, I think that, certain boards, it's done, so appointments are done by committee, and others it's, all one person or, a collection of 1 or 2 people. And I just think that you want to make sure that you're getting a good balance and not just one perspective that is, putting a lot of power into these committees. And, again, right now it's working, but people change, personalities change, perspectives change, and then all of a sudden, it could be a 5-year go-around. All these boards are 3-year terms.
Yep.
So by the time a board gets constituted, it takes time to correct it if it goes awry.
So to kind of expand on that, obviously you were part of the Finance Committee before and then Board of Selectmen. We've had this come up multiple times with multiple people about the appointment of the FinCom directly being appointed by the town moderator. Do you think that would be an issue going forward? Obviously you were...
It depends who your moderator is. So, because the moderator has an awful lot of leverage in the town when it comes to specific boards. Sometimes you get, Board of Selectmen get 2, school committee gets 1, planning board gets 1, moderator gets 4. And so, again, that's something just depending on who the moderator is, could potentially be of concern down the road.
do you think because of that and not obviously knowing who the town's going to elect, given who runs and times change and things happen, are you in favor of something like that, where we'd go to like a kind of a hybrid appointment to that? Because FinCom's so important in the town government that we have.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Well, as it's constituted today. So if we move out of the
agree. If everything's
open town
staying
meeting
there.
and move into, so that will change too. So, you know, it depends on what form of government, you know, the town elects to go towards. Because again, I think most people think that the town moderator is to run the town meeting, and, you know, we're fortunate to have an entertaining one at the moment for a town meeting, which is going to be a little dry, but there's a lot more to that role than I think what people anticipate when they go to cast it.
Anybody else have any questions?
That's it?
That's it.
I'm here for another hour, so.
You're free to stay.
No, and again, if there's anything else that you can, anything else pops up, I'm more than happy to come back or to give any insight.
Thank you. Yeah, once we, maybe get into some discussions and deliberations, we may be actually calling some people back and bouncing ideas, or getting further clarification. But if you think of anything that, was important that we didn't ask, you wanted to bring up, something that, comes up in the near future that you hadn't considered at some point, just feel free to call or email. That would be great.
Okay, and thank you all. I know this is a very exciting job, so best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, let's see. Heading back to the agenda, we have the acceptance of the minutes of our last meeting, which was July 8th.
Oh, it's always me.
If everything's in order, I'll take a motion to accept the minutes of July 8th.
I motion to accept the minutes. of July.
Seconded?
Second.
So moved? Okay. Peter, anything you want to bring up?
No!
Thank you. Okay. We'll close public comments for now. Let's see, we've interviewed everybody. Sandy has done a really good job of scheduling, almost all of the employees. I think there's only 2 people we're waiting to hear back from, Sandy?
2, and then a third that I heard back from. I'm just trying to get the final date with.
Okay.
Emily, yeah.
All right. Any issue you think getting them scheduled? Is it critical if we don't?
Say that one more time?
Any issues if we are not able to get them scheduled?
The ones that haven't responded, you mean?
Yes.
I mean, I think it's up to them if they want to come in, right? We're giving them the
Yeah, we can't
opportunity.
force people.
Right.
They don't want to talk to us.
Right.
Fine.
I don't know why they wouldn't, but.
I won't hold it personally. Okay, just in terms of scheduling, you're going to see on here, we did schedule a meeting for August 26th, just to kind of keep things moving. So that will mean we'll have 3 meetings that month, and we'll go back-to-back August 19th and August 26th.
I will not be here for the 26th.
Okay. That was my next question is, Carrie, 26.
And I will not be here for the 19th.
Okay. Is anybody aware of any meetings that they're going to miss, any vacation? My vacation's not until Labor Day week, and I think I get off easy that week. I don't think we have a meeting
Yeah,
scheduled,
that's
so.
the only day for my vacation.
Okay. Okay. If I can just ask if you do know you're going to be out at a specific date in the future, just to let me know, and I'll try and bring it up the week before. I know there's unforeseen things that can happen, but I got a little nervous when we got the second cancellation this morning, and I started counting. It's like, God, I hope we have enough, especially while, it's not necessarily as critical, although while we're deliberating, yes, it's critical. We would love everybody's opinion and input. But while we're scheduling folks, it could be very difficult if we had to try and shuffle the schedule around after the fact. So if you could just be cognizant of that, I just ask that.
Laura, do you know when the Board of Selectmen might take up that question about calling in?
I was hoping to ask Renee about it tonight. The agenda's not out yet, so I did ask her, and Jack. She said she's mentioned it a few times, and she said she's just going to put it on the agenda. Whether it's on this Thursdays, I'm not sure. I know since they missed their last meeting, it's probably going to be fairly full, so it may have gotten pushed off.
Yep.
I will remind her again, they seem to be in favor of it. It doesn't seem too terribly difficult, so, and I know that will help. Okay, so we talked about that. One of the other potential issues that we have in October is we may run into Fall Town Meeting. We're not quite sure when that's going to be. Sandy thinks it may be the 21st. If and when we know that, we can make a decision on whether we would just want to move our meeting to the Tuesday, or move it up or back a week.
Okay.
We can go from there. And participation, okay, going back to some of the admin stuff, the Dropbox is set up, looks good. If anybody having any issues with it?
I don't know
No,
if
I
I've
think I
gone in it
finally
yet.
Okay.
I think I was finally able to get in. Some trouble.
Yeah, just take a look and make sure you don't have anything, so that's a good place to throw stuff for the group to be able to refer to at some point. But I think we're going to put the public hearing comments there and there was something else. Oh, the attendance list, yeah. Good news, I got the email from Mike Units, from Lauren Goldberg about the opinion on the Charter Review Committee. And they made a determination that because the Charter Commission is running, there does not seem to be a need to hold the Charter Review Committee in addition to the commission. So they will table that, which was good.
That's good.
And I think that's it in terms of admin stuff. We talked about August, October. That's it. Anybody else have any discussion items on admin-related things? Okay. All right. Why don't we look at, within your packet, and I had sent it around, the draft version of the survey, which I like. I wasn't quite sure. I did read the background that he sent on that article of where it came from. I'm not sure it necessarily equates going from corporate to municipal. But the more I thought about it, I couldn't think of a better way of asking some of these questions, and it's very direct. I think we'll probably get some interesting answers. The only question I had was, in terms of the use of the word operates, as it relates to how Norton's town government operates, and I didn't know whether it was superfluous, or we should just say as it relates to Norton's town government, and I could go either way. It's more of a semantics issue at this point, but if anybody felt strongly one way or the other.
I think it's more precise to have operates in there.
Okay,
Yeah, me too.
okay. Did anybody have any issues with the questions? Anything more they'd like to see? I think it's definitely a good start. I'm interested to see what we get back.
You know, I think this is perfect.
Okay.
I don't think you want to get too detailed.
Nope.
Yeah, I
Like-
think
I like
after our
how-
discussion last time.
I like how it's worded, and I think if we can expand on it if we need to, or if we
Right.
are going to search for more information, like Janie said, we can always kind
A
of.
second set of survey questions.
Yeah, if we need to
Yeah.
kind of file it down to certain things that we've seen a lot of, then we can do
Yeah.
that. But right now, I think gives people the idea of, hey, look, tell us what you like and what you don't. And I think this is kind of 3 ways to do it, and then letting them kind of give us their own opinion on the last question. I think it's concise, and I think it'll work.
Okay.
I agree. Did anybody have any ideas about when we want to run this? Do we want to run that now? Do we want to wait for a little bit? And how
say now.
long?
I'd say
I'd
immediately.
say as soon as possible, yeah.
Okay. How long do we want to leave it out there?
I think until we can, just open until we can figure out,
It's raining.
my opinion is I think we leave it open until we're done with at least at minimal our gathering information stage. And if we need to then take a vote to kind of stop it and then reassess where we're at, we can do that. But
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can still download a report every month or so
Yep.
while it's
The
open.
data?
Hmm.
Yep.
Just to kind of see what we're.
And we can discuss it too at the meeting, so
Yeah.
we're not just waiting till the end to discuss the whole thing. We can kind
Right.
of break it down and say, let's say we started it now, the end of August, what do we have? End of September, what do we have? And go from there. And then when we're done in our I think, what's the meetings we have scheduled out till September? So we have at least 2 months of hopefully information that we can kind of digest and see if we need to continue this one or if we want to change it or flip it around a little bit.
I'm going to regret not bringing an umbrella.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's done by the time.
It's just it's a passing shower.
It's fast moving, I'm sure.
Yeah. We can just keep talking. Okay, so one of the things I don't think we talked to Dave about was in what form the responses come in. I'm assuming it's probably just going to be a Google Sheets. I'm hoping we get decent response.
The only other thing I was thinking about with this is I know some people had mentioned that they were people in town that I've talked to that are a little leery about doing anything online. They haven't submit whether they think it is actually, confidential or whatnot. I'm wondering if we should maybe give them an option that if they wanted to say, write these questions out and drop them off to the town or mail them to the town, and we're able to get them, say, in a mailbox, like whether it be through town clerk, that we can pick up and bring to the meeting. I just don't want to eliminate anybody that says, I'm not doing anything online. Like, I'll submit your questions if you want to. I'm not saying there's going to be a ton of them, but I also don't want to just say, we're only going to accept it by this form, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
There's a box outside with like a envelope. I think it's for bills primarily, but would that be an easy way for them to deposit it in there? Maybe we can separate it. I don't know what goes in there.
yeah, I don't know if we're allowed to commandeer the
I just don't
box
want people to think that they well, if I email you with a suggestion or a comment, I don't want my name out there.
Yeah.
How am I doing this anonymously? And now they're going to go on this, and while this isn't on, some people are paranoid about online.
So you're saying they can print it out and submit it to us? Is that kind of what
Yeah,
you're
they can either print it out, or if they just want to write the questions down and then handwrite it out, if they want to type it out, whatever they want to do, and then they can either mail it and
Well,
or drop it off.
I wonder if we could get just a mailbox with the other department.
I was just wondering if I talked to Lucia and she agrees to just collect them for us and
Yeah.
put them in an envelope, and we can, she can let me know if we've got any.
I just think that there are a few people that mentioned to me, like in passing, that I've seen that I don't mind doing that, but I'm not doing anything online.
Yeah.
Like,
No, we
I don't-
definitely want
And I don't want to say
everybody-
like, oh, too bad, that's, there are some people that just refuse to do anything online and, anything social media wise too, they don't want anything to do. So I think we should at least
Have that option.
allow them the option to, and I'm not saying this, I don't think there's gonna be, 100 of these things that are coming in by mail or by drop-off, but if we get 5 or 10 of them and a few of them are really good, I don't wanna also eliminate those, so.
No, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Okay, so the plan will be, I'll talk to Dave Heaney. I'm assuming it's probably close to live. We'll put a link to it on the website so they can access it directly. I will set up a Norton alert, similar to kind of like the heat advisory that we just got. Going through the town, I think we can reach 5,000 people around that at this point.
Social media?
Yes, so we'll ask the Norton Alerts folks to put it on their website. We'll submit something, actually, Janie, if you don't mind, can we ask you to submit that to Norton Neighbors and, what's the other one, Norton Connect?
Yeah, and we also have an email list started of people who gave us their emails and checked that, yes, they do want notification for future meetings and information. So the link can go straight to those people as well. We can ask on social media as well, if anybody wants an email with the link in it, they can just pass on their email, because I think sometimes it's easier for people to get the link right in their email as opposed to having to go somewhere to get it.
I agree.
So that's a possibility too, and I can put that out there.
Okay. And so if anybody has signed up for Norton Alerts and they've signed up for an email of that alert, the link will be in that. I don't think we probably have the ability to hypertext it. They'll probably still have to cut and paste it. But it'll at least look like an email address that they, should be able to use and get to the site directly.
It won't be a link?
It will
It'll
be.
a link directly to the...
Yeah, it's basically a URL
Right. So it'll take them directly to the
with,
survey.
yeah, I don't know within Norton Alerts if it'll allow me to basically hypertext the
Oh, I see.
link within that alert. I don't know if it allows that capability. I suspect it may restrict me from allowing somebody to redirect somewhere else.
At least we could do it on the Norton pages, though.
Oh, yeah,
And Norton Neighbors.
absolutely, yeah.
On the alert, you're talking about the phone too, right? Doing a phone alert?
The phone, it's gonna actually read it, yeah, so
So I'm
it's,
wondering if it says go to the website instead on the phone. And then they can click
yeah,
the website.
maybe, and just give the email address of the Charter Commission page.
The email for the,
Not the email, sorry, the URL for the Charter Commission
I
page.
wouldn't, I would just even say go to the town website, to the Charter Commission page.
Okay. Okay.
Because I don't think anyone's going to listen to the message and write down the URL.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be more helpful for an email. Let me test it to myself and see if it will allow a clickable
Right.
link that we can actually use. If so, we'll keep it, and if not, then we'll just redirect them otherwise. Okay. So we're going to start it immediately. We're going to leave it out there. I've got to talk to Dave Heaney, make sure it's okay to set out live. Website, Norton Alerts, social media. And on the website, we're going to have to give, we can actually make a PDF of the hard copy if they were interested in that. And I'll talk to Lucia. Have them return it to town hall, or maybe, I don't want to inundate, I don't want to burden Lucia any further.
Can we,
About Jen Reed.
if we make a link, under our webpage, if we make a link that says the survey, and when they click on it, it'll just be option 1 right here on Google, option 2, the PDF. If you feel to drop off a mail to town hall, this is the address and whatever she gives us for the attention to, and be done with it. Then they'll have 2 options right as they click on the survey before they even go into it. They either let them fill it out right online, or you can, save and print.
There's some sort of formula, and I can't remember what it is, that the more times you have to click, the less likely you are to continue following it. So if there was a way to have the survey and, even a PDF up in that corner, rather than have people have to go through two.
So what if we do this,
Pages.
as you go onto our page and you click the survey, it goes directly into this, and then we just put a small thing on top of it, if you feel more comfortable.
If it's
covering it.
possible, yeah. Or just have the
I think-
survey and then the PDF, right?
Yeah, I
Extra
think
on
within,
our main
on our
website.
webpage, we'll
Yeah.
have, here's the survey, if you'd prefer to fill it out by hand and mail it in. Here's a
Just have the
PDF
two.
with a link to the PDF, and,
Wherever it goes.
yeah, and on the PDF, I'll put an address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I gotta talk to
Even if there
Lucia.
isn't a print option from the survey format, it would be too hard to type up. Just
Yeah.
put it-
Yeah. I'll call Lucia and see if she doesn't mind collecting them, or we can ask Jen, I'm sure she won't mind either. Okay. Any other discussion on ideas? We've got social media, we've got the Norton alerts, we'll put it on our website. I think we should, there'll be a little bit of overlap, but I'm hoping we'd be able to hit a third of the town's population that way.
Yep.
Did we say something about senior center, either, what did we?
Oh,
say?
yeah,
Talking
Beth-
to- Maybe talking to Beth and asking her to, either we could do drop a paper surveys there,
Yeah.
or something that can get that population engaged.
Yeah, let's see if she doesn't, I don't want to add to her burden either, but we can see if,
No, we can print and drop them off.
Yeah.
tomorrow.
no, I know,
Like
but just in
ideas
terms of,
to print them and
it's-
drop them off, and even I'd say one of us could designate to go there for like an hour, but I think if she just has them there, they can do it at their convenience. I don't
Yeah.
think,
yeah, we can give her an envelope to collect them in and just pick them up periodically.
Correct. We can just put them in the envelopes already, all they gotta do is take them out.
Yeah,
I think too is if we do reach out to her and she has a time frame when she has the most, people there, I don't even say it's a bad idea for one of us to go there, like you were saying, and just speak to, if there's 20, 30, or 40 people there, just to explain to them what this is and why we're asking for this information. I think that's kind of beneficial. Just to handing a stack of papers and them going, well, what is this for? What am I doing? At least if somebody's there in person, speaking to the Council on Aging about what we're doing, if they haven't heard, or if they haven't been online, they haven't used social media, they don't understand what's going on, we can at least explain the survey and why it's important to us.
we don't have Beth until the end of September.
I'm sorry?
We don't have Beth until the end of September. I was gonna say if we had her coming up
Right.
in the next couple of meetings, we could talk to her then.
So we just need someone to reach out to her.
Does anybody want to volunteer for that?
I'll reach out to her.
Thank you.
Please, I don't even mind, if you reach out to her and she does have a certain time, I don't mind going with you either if you want company and, helping you with whatever. Or you
Okay.
can talk to them too, just let me know, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Helping you out.
Are there any other populations like that we should consider? Just trying to think.
Maybe the veterans group, right? I don't know if they have like regular gatherings of any sort.
Sounds like it's mostly just people that would be walking in, but Estelle might be inclined to, I don't know, I don't want to take away from the time that they need to get their services either.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if we leave a pile, if we leave
We
a
can
pile
leave them
for
with the
people,
town, yeah, here at Town Hall.
when they come in to see her anyway, they can grab it if they want.
Isn't there a table of information and brochures and stuff out there?
Yep, there is.
We can just literally duct tape a envelope to the wall.
With some, yeah.
Yeah.
I think when we put it out online, at least on social media too, we can let people know that it's here.
Yep.
So if they want to just come to town hall, fill out a hard copy of it and leave it right there, they
Yeah.
can. That takes 2 seconds to post it on. I don't think we gotta go through the alerts and all that other stuff with it, but at least in the social media, we can just say, if you feel more comfortable coming to the town hall, these are where they're gonna be.
Yep.
Yeah, I would honestly, then we can do what we all decide, but I would honestly hold out on the alert for the survey, especially if we're gonna have it out there for such a large amount of time. Maybe go through social media, see what we can pick up on the website, see how many we can get, and then maybe use it somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Reminder, this is out
To
there.
stagger it,
as
you mean?
Yeah, as opposed to doing all our, putting it all out there once. That way, maybe in a month, we can do Because I know we want to be liberal when we use that when people are getting messages.
Yeah.
I'd kind of like to grab people's attention as early as possible, though. Like, I like the idea of, we don't have to do everything as an alert, but I like the idea of, even if it's not can we separate out email versus phone alerts, or like?
Yes.
I don't know if it's the same people who have signed up for both or whatever, but
So there are people that may have signed up for just phone versus email. For the last I checked, the email list was around 4,700 or 4,800
Yeah. people.
It was a decent amount. And I felt it worked, not that we got a lot of people at the public hearing, but it worked. It worked. But I think if people got an email with, especially if there was a clickable link within it, that actively brought them there, they might be more inclined to jump there.
Yeah. And do they separate phone calls versus text?
Yes, you can. So it can be, you can actually even do a text. The text limits you to 45 characters, so I probably would not even bother. But I can tailor a specific message for the phone versus the email. So it'll reach the same, not necessarily the same number of people, because they would have had to have signed up for both services.
Yeah.
But I can tailor the phone message to be different from the email message.
So what if we do a email this round and hit social media and limit the phone? The only reason I say I agree with her with the phone thing is that I just don't, not just for us, but for the actual emergency side of it, if people are getting phone calls every
Yeah.
single time for hydrants and this and
Yeah.
that, I think it's going to
Yep.
become, you're going to see that number and you're going to be like,
Yeah.
because it's,
Yeah, no, that's
It's
why
too
I
much.
asked. Like an email, I feel, if we have, almost 5,000 emails, I think that's a great start.
so if we stay directly to email and that's,
There's so many people who aren't on social
Oh, no,
media,
I agree, I
so
agree. If we give email, I think it gives people that when they check their email, they can do it at their own leisure.
Yeah.
Instead of you're slamming people with calls at whatever time when they're in the busy day. It's 'cause I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to take the emergency aspect away from
Yeah.
it, that police and fire are going to use it, or a town that's going to use it for something that happened. They're not,
Yeah. And people get so many
Yeah.
junk mail, nobody's really going to complain about another piece of email that you just have to hit a button and it's gone.
and they signed up for it. I mean, they obviously
They
want
did
it. I
sign
mean,
up for
it's
it.
it's something that they can
Yeah.
want it. But they can answer in their own time. And I just don't want to make this alert things a disaster for future, because I think it is a good system. I think it's going to work for things that happen in town on an emergency thing, whether it's weather or whatnot.
Okay. So let me first thing is I've got to talk to Dave Heaney and make sure that the site is live and available. That's the link, and we can use it, and it's ready to go. Once we have that, it's just a matter of kind of formulating the message we want to get out, but if we can try and work to have it out for, let's say, the beginning of next week.
Okay.
All right. And I will get back to you on Dave. I'll email everybody in terms of if Dave, he needs to do anything before we go live. Okay. Everybody okay? Ready to move on? Okay. How are we doing on time? Oh, look at us. Couple of things I just wanted to mention. And one of them is just a clarification from last week. And Sandy had mentioned that there may have been, based on a couple of the questions, some confusion between a town manager and a town administrator. And there was a point in time where they were different functions, and a town administrator was more of like an executive assistant, didn't have a lot of power or authority. And a town manager by name denoted more authority and power. However, that's not, with the advent of the charter and being able to confer authority to various groups, specifically the town manager, it's not really the way it works. So at this point, on a case-by-case basis, a town may be known, or a person may be known as an administrator or a manager, but it's purely semantic. It's what the charter confers to them in terms of authority is what makes them strong. versus week.
Yeah, I want to point out, though, that when, like, Mike Units explains and talks about the fact that he was a town administrator
Yes.
prior, when people in town government use that term, and we see it we saw in a charter, the Westwood Charter.
Yes.
We saw town administrator, you'll see it, that the town, in Sun Chronicle, you'll see that a town goes from town administrator to town manager. So I think it's still pretty commonly used.
Yep.
In terms of, when they say the word town administrator, they mean someone who has less power.
Yes.
When they have a town manager, they mean someone who has, more power. So, when Mike was using those two terms, that was sort of what he was getting at.
Yep. But there are town administrators that go by administrator that are considered a strong town administrator, just like a strong town manager. And there are other towns that use completely different names. There's town coordinator, general manager, executive director, administrative coordinator. So it's somewhat semantics at this point. It's more in line of what the charter or the bylaws confers to them in terms of power and authority.
I think the charter is it doesn't matter what you call them. I think it's going to depend on what the charter outlines them for the ability and how much power the town wants to give them. Like Mike was saying, he preferred this job over this last job because of the amount of, so-called power or rights the town manager had here. I mean,
To Sandy's point, though, we might want to keep the terms in mind if that's the trend still for people looking for the job. If Mike's going to retire and, we
Yes.
still need a town manager, we want to just be aware of how we can make it attractive too.
Agreed.
And like I said, I
Candidates.
think when you read articles in the newspaper, they do use those terms very specifically.
Yep.
To mean, more power, less power.
Okay.
I think it's important that any charter that, whether we decide to change it or not, has those things outlined in it, because that's what helps those things down the road. I mean, if we go to more an ambiguous role of it, then we have to think, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, town managers are going to change. We are going to have different ones if that's what we decide to do.
Yep.
So we want to make sure that the charter stays outlined on their ability to govern this town.
Okay. The other, as we're going through these, we've spent a little bit of time on some of them more than others. And I think I'm to blame for that, because I think when we first started looking through them, I said, just point out anything that, is of interest to you or you wanted to bring up. I think in the effort of time, especially as we're getting into meeting with more and more folks, we might be better served focusing on just things we want to mark for discussion at a later point, to add or amend in our charter, and kind of avoid the deep dives and deliberations until we get into that point of the process, and maybe just try and spend, no more than 15 or 20 minutes kind of hitting the things that we would like to mark for consideration at a later point. If that works for everybody? Okay. All right. With that being said, having read Town of Weston, which has an open town meeting, 3 board of selectmen, and a population of 11,261 folks. It's made up a series of special acts of the general law, and it confers the authority to the town manager. It is a strong town manager. Did anybody have anything? I did not note anything of particular interest within that. I skimmed it very quickly.
I read through I personally think that Weston should be one of the ones we don't even look at. I think it's very confusing to what we want. I think there's a lot other towns that we can use
Yeah.
besides Weston's.
I think she gave this to us to kind of demonstrate the different ways towns have to go about making changes, and sort of agree with you there. There wasn't a lot that I found useful for our purposes, but it was a good exercise. I learned a couple of things. So, with that being said, why don't we move on to Plymouth? It is a town. It is a large town. It has a population of almost 56,500 people. They have a strong town manager. The executive branch is made up of 5 selectmen. Their legislative branch is made up of representative town meeting. And this is the first representative town meeting charter that we've looked at. There were a lot of things they did differently. A few I wouldn't mind having a discussion about it at some future point. But if we wanted to start going through, was there anything within Chapter 1 anybody wanted to bring up? Oh, one of the things somebody had a question on, the precincts. Sandy had mentioned this morning that there was a question as to why it doesn't have the number of precincts that the town has. And Sandy had mentioned that it's set by census data and has to be approved by the state. So our town doesn't have the number of precincts within it either, and it's probably for a
It's
reason.
set by population, so they
Yeah.
need to leave it open as population changes, right?
Right. They happen to have 15 precincts, if anybody was interested.
And how many do we have? 5?
We have 5.
Wow. Okay.
Anybody have anything within Chapter 2 they wanted to talk about or point out?
I think as things get a little bit further along for us, I think this is probably going to be a decent charter to look at for the, some of the things they did with the representative town meeting. Some of the discussions they have. They have a good amount of information in here about how they do majority voting and open session and whatnot as an RTM. So I think it's going to be something that we need to keep this charter handy.
Yep.
So each precinct here gets 9 members. So that's quite a large,
135 reps, but it's interesting because in terms of the total population, it is 0.25% of the population,
okay.
which was small.
I don't know if this is a question that we can find the answer to, or is it maybe that you already know this. I wonder what also, how difficult they have of getting those 135 members for a full board at all times.
Yeah.
You know, is it something that they're always short, or if they're, you know, because I know they talk about in here being quorums and whatnot. I think that's something important, that maybe that's why they did that, and have 135 members instead of having 250 or more.
Yeah, and I mean, we have 5 precincts, so 9 across 5, we're talking about 45 people.
Yep.
It's not nearly as bad, right?
No.
Doesn't seem as onerous to me.
Well, I think if we were to switch to that, we'd probably want more precincts to have. we probably
More
want to set-
representation.
You
So
want
that-
more
so
than
that
9.
So smaller
People,
precincts.
smaller precincts, so fewer people to,
Gotcha.
just they're better represented if they're smaller groups.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Anything within, let's see, where are we into? There was.
I was simply interested to read how they set up their representative
Yeah.
government with the caucuses, and so I thought it was very well laid out.
Yes.
And easy to understand.
It was. I did have 2 things that I liked that I'd like to possibly consider at some point, or we might want to consider. 212.2. They had a requirement that the Advisory and Finance Committee had to provide the representative town meeting a copy of the budget 14 days prior to the scheduled date of the meeting, which I think might be a good idea and give people time, whoever's ever has to look at the budget. So they're not getting it literally the night of, which I think happens in some cases. Not that they have to necessarily adhere to it, but it's nice to have
Well, they need
give them
time
some
to ask
advance.
questions, right?
Yes, yeah.
Is any of that set by state law, like with ours, we have to have the warrant so many days in advance? with the budget part, as part of that. I wonder if that's, if state law weighs in on how many days they're supposed to be providing.
I think that is, I think that's why it is amended by the chapter 336 of the Acts of 2012. In that that 212-2.
What does ours say about warrants? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, but like, is, like, the requirement to have the warrant, let's say 10 days before a town meeting, you know, the closed warrant, is it the bare minimum requirement? Can the town decide it's to be
Yes.
closed, right, 20
Yes.
days
Right.
before?
I was just wondering if the state had a requirement, if this was more than what the state required.
Yeah.
Something to consider. The other thing that I liked, which I hadn't seen anywhere before, was 212-4. What I wasn't certain, so basically what it's basically stating is that in order to spend more than 1/12 of your budget in the last month of the fiscal year, you actually need to go and get approval by the advisory and finance committee. Essentially, I'm assuming that's to prevent spending of the unused budget to demonstrate a false need to maintain that same level. What it doesn't clarify is whether that includes schools. Since they have their own budget, does that encompass them? I don't know how
Line
often.
Item would have to be
Yeah.
counted. I mean, they have a line item, right?
Yep.
So they'd be just like anybody else for that.
I thought it was a good way of kind of, I don't know if that actually is occurring, but it's not a bad measure to consider at some point. Anything within Chapter 3, the executive branch?
I had, this is 3, yeah. I had something way off in, 313-2.
I'm sorry, 313 what?
2. Just food for thought as we're making our comprehensive master plan. Wondering if possibly putting something like this, accountability, this, plus there was also 314-4, talking about going back to that master plan and updating it annually and looking at it annually, so it doesn't just, we're paying all this money for a master plan. Could we help by putting something in the charter so it doesn't just sit on a shelf?
I think that's a good point.
I think in our charter, we have one mention of a just, it doesn't say comprehensive master plan, it says master plan. Doesn't really describe what that looks like, doesn't really talk, it says the planning board shall update it or keep it, but it doesn't really say the detail that this gives about what that means.
I kind of like how they put it in, I mean, we have a full-time planner, I mean, they pretty much put it right on them to do this.
Right,
I mean,
right, and then in 314-4, again, they put on the planning board to just take a look at it periodically. And they can even create a master plan committee if they want, if they, if it's too much. Because I thought at first, how do they manage that? But in 314-7, it says they can create a committee. So they could always pass it off to a subgroup to work on that with them, for them.
I think those are questions we should maybe write down and table for when we have some maybe members of the planning board come in
Absolutely.
and the planner, because I think if we give them the option that they can do, if we were able to, say, implement this or put together something like this in our charter to be voted on with detailed things such as these.
Right.
Obviously tailored to us, that, maybe it's something like you said, that we keep, that's constant, you know what I mean? Instead of saying to the town manager, oh, you'll be responsible for this, and adding something else to, and nothing against Mike, but
Right.
there's obviously gonna be somebody else besides Mike, you know what I mean? And now you're throwing another thing on his table that we're trying to get away from.
Right.
Put it up to people who actually know what's going on and do that every day.
Right. Yeah, just to specify it even, I think is helpful to someone looking at it. Again, because we did allocate money from the town budget.
I agree.
To pay for this. You don't want to see it just sitting on a shelf or being used as a doorstop.
And I think it gives us an idea that even if we put it in here, that, you know, where the updates are given to the townspeople, so they know
Right.
this is when it's coming up, or this is what's going on with it, so we're not prying, again, kind of the transfer of information, so we're not prying it out of people. You know, it's set forth in the charter that we have it.
So it's the planning board, and what was the first one you mentioned?
The planner, so 313.2 says the department itself will be responsible for development and maintenance of a comprehensive master plan.
Gotcha, and then the planning,
And then 314.4 really details what that looks like and,
what they're supposed to do with it.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And like they have, you know, they have specific things in there, like, so 314-5, the planning board shall make recommendations to the RTM and the Board of Selectmen on all matters concerning the planning, physical, environmental. I mean, it kind of strictly outlines that they're responsible to keep the other boards, you know, updated of what's going on, and to have this, a constant revolving thing going on. I do like how they outline this in here.
Yeah,
And they tied it in with multiple boards that have interest in that master plan. It's not just giving one person to say, hey, figure this all out. You know, these people, they're dealing with this every day. So do the boards in our town. They should be given the ability to have this as a running, you know.
yeah, no, I like it, and I like the fact that it requires them to make recommendations based on it too, right? So it's not just willy-nilly grabbing stuff as we go and trying to make recommendations based on that, but it needs to be guided by the plan.
Yep.
I think with each one of those, I mean, I'm sure we're gonna have, you know, if we have this master plan, I'm sure there's gonna be things that are 5, 10, 15 years, or some things that are gonna take a long time to work out, but we should also have things that we're looking forward to these fiscal years and within the next fiscal year, so things are actually getting accomplished. So we're not just continually tabling, whether it be projects or things going on. I think
Yeah.
Mike kind of brought that up, even with some of the infrastructure, you know, things with the sewer line stuff. Why we put in a, you know, brand-new water line, tearing up the, you know, the road on Reservoir, and not doing a sewer line at the same time. So if this is something that master plan can say, look, in 5 years, we're looking at putting water on this road or redoing the water lines in this road, maybe we should look at upgrading whatever. So we're not doing 3, 4 things, you know, over and over again.
Yeah, and even if it's a long-term plan, it's good to keep it in mind, because like Mike Flaherty actually alluded to today, right? John Scott Boulevard, that should have been industrial, right? But they went with housing, and that kind of killed the industrial
Yeah.
aspect.
There was a lot of things going on John Scott Boulevard at the time, but
Yeah.
yeah, John Scott Boulevard, there wasn't a lot of
But I mean, if you have a plan in place, you can say, this is where we want to go.
Yeah.
So maybe we don't want to get into housing on this, in this area, or maybe keep it just to one side, or something like that. But if you have a plan in place, and you can kind of make your decisions based on that.
I think that was some of the problem with what he was talking about, John Scott. You know, there was no sewer, there was no infrastructure. You know, it's hard to have businesses come down when you're asking them to put in private sewers and,
Yeah,
you know,
yep.
so.
Anything else within chapter 3 you want to earmark? The only thing I sort of liked was the planning board's ability to appoint, in this case, it's an open space committee, but I'm wondering if we should give them some autonomy to appoint a committee to work kind of within conjunction with them, not necessarily open space, but I'm blanking now in terms of what I'm even thinking of, but to further the master plan.
Well, that's also in 314.7. That's where they said they can appoint any committee to assist and advise the board.
Got it?
So it kind of leaves things pretty open that if they are looking for some help in a specific area,
Yep.
that they can create a subcommittee.
I think like a perfect example of that would be like conservation. We know Norton is tough with conservation because of where we live and type of environment we have. So if we were able to do something like this, and they were able to appoint an advisory committee, for instance, with the conservation, so we can kind of outline certain things on, look, this area may not be suitable for what your plan is because of these issues. I mean, we can kind of direct it in the way we want it to go. So I think, like you were saying, like being able to, as they come up or as the plans come up, being able to do these committees, I think is important. And I think they do a really good job of outlining that exact thing.
I think we do them now through town manager, right?
What's that?
We create these new committees.
Through, usually Board of Selectmen, I think, is usually who, if you want
Well,
to create,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so, yeah.
But it gives a little bit more, it gives them a little bit more power to create a
Appointment
group.
based on their
that-
need.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I think you're giving people, I think in this whole thing is you're giving people a direction of power and direction of their job scope, things they handle every day, you know? Like, in my opinion, it'd be very difficult for the Board of Selectmen to go out and handle all the stuff they're handling, and then on top of it, be tasked with trying to create a master plan. Now, if they're being called in on meetings or to help represent or ask questions, that's one thing, but why are we not giving them the job of either the planner or the planning board or zoning board of appeals, that direct authority to do this type of stuff? You know, why are we having a town manager or Board of Selectmen run it when it's really too much work for them to do?
Yeah. And it's not really within their
Yeah.
wheelhouse,
I agree, you know?
so.
The other thing I just want to bring up, chapter 5, this is something that we should look at too, is on 511, the regular election for all town offices shall be by official ballot held on the third Saturday of May each year.
I had that marked as well. I liked Saturday, not necessarily May.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that Dayton does it on Saturdays, too.
Okay. I think if, and when we get to that point where we want to discuss it, we'd be interested to see if there's any studies that show whether changing it to a weekend date actually increases
Yeah.
the number of
Yeah, I just think it's
people that
something-
vote. I think it sounds like a good idea theoretically, and it should work, but does it in practicality?
And with that, I understand there's a lot of things that go into that, but I was also thinking not even for pure numbers, I was just thinking for pure logistics of planning an election. Right now, we're doing elections during school hours, where worrying about traffic. Traffic's already bad enough in this town, and we're, throwing on top of it, asking people to come into a one-way out thing to vote at one place, where now you're talking about school being closed, traffic being maybe a little bit less, not during rush hour on the weekend. I think it's something that we at least need to look at too, down the road, of maybe that's something that we should give consideration to.
No, that's a good point. It's not just the
Yeah, it's not just the
numbers, it's the
numbers.
logistics.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not a bad point. Did anybody have anything, we jumped over chapter 4, was there anything anybody wanted to earmark? Anything within chapter 5? This is the first time I've seen, well, since we've moved away from open town meeting, within 562. I think the benchmark is high in terms of the number of votes and the amount of time you have to collect them. But giving the town back the ability to call for a referendum on things that they may have a question on is probably not a bad idea and might assist us in being able to sell something that we want to change in the future. But I think we need to have a discussion as to what the balance is between the amount of time and the number of signatures in terms of what's reasonable and feasible, and, we want to make sure it's not too high of a benchmark, but not too low either, so that we're constantly having to go to an election to overturn something. But I thought that was a good idea. It provides the checks and balances that people may be inclined to raise as an issue if we were to move away from something other than open town meeting.
I liked that candidates for the representative town meeting only need to get 10 signatures.
Yes.
I think that encourages people to run. It's
Yep.
not overly burdensome.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything else within 5? Anything in 6? The only question I had was their periodic charter review actually happens every 5 years. I don't know whether that's better or worse. I think probably trying to find, it would be helpful in terms of things would get updated more often, but it also means every 5 years you've got to find a group of people willing to sit on that committee.
Well, it also takes time. I think the last one, start to finish, took 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, by the time they made the recommendations, they got voted on at the town meeting, and got voted on at the elections.
Yeah.
There's the gap there between all those different events made it drag out.
Yep.
I wonder if their time, from at least every 5 years, are they defining the 5 years as 5 calendar years or 5 years from when the process is finished?
True, yeah.
I assume 5 calendar years, that's how I read it, but
Mm.
when you bring up that point, makes me wonder.
They got some quick amount of time.
Yeah, I think ours says any year ending in a 0.
Mm-hmm.
This was probably just due to the fact the charter was implemented, let's say I don't even know when it was, but let's just say, 2007, and it's
Yeah,
just 5 years from that
I wonder if we
date.
could put in something like with that transition period that, for the first review happens pretty quickly.
Yep.
And then after that, at least every. however many
That wouldn't be a
years.
bad idea too, because if you're implementing something new,
No.
you at least give
let's
the
review it
ability
right
to
away,
review it
yeah,
quickly
yeah.
and make sure we got it right.
Right,
And then
right.
when you do iron everything out, there's no point in meeting every, 3 years when,
Mhm.
especially when the process takes a lot longer to be able to change the things that we need to change.
And I think that's a really good point. I think it's a really good selling point for people too.
Right.
When they're in the process and we have this in here and this is going to be reviewed and I like that.
Right, because I think the goal is we're gonna say this isn't necessarily perfect, right? We're not
Right.
gonna get this all perfect this
Right.
time around, that we expect that in a few years, things evolve and change.
Yeah.
I mean, just think the
That's a good point, yeah.
town itself changes and
Mhm.
population goes crazy in 10, 15, for the first 10 or 20 years of a charter, everything's kind of good to go, and then all of a sudden you see something change in town, or things change and, maybe the state changes things, and then we have to go in and I think we have to at least give the ability to update it as things progress.
And I like the ability to update it and it has some bite behind it because in ours right now, there is nothing binding there. There's nothing that says it has to go through to a vote, if I'm correct.
So that again, if there's nothing that.
Well, I like the fact of putting in something that makes, like right now ours has a commission every ending in 0. Is that how they form it? But there's nothing binding like what we're doing now that's going to go to the voters. Is that accurate?
Yeah, like, what I think what you're saying is,
Sorry.
if we implement,
Oh,
I
there's
think what
nothing
you're saying is, if we implement like a charter, actual charter commission
Correct.
to be formed every 10 years, say elected, it has some teeth behind it that whether the changes they make can at least be put forth to the town voters to implement some changes.
Well, I think the charter committee would also be put forward to voters. So is that what you're asking, or?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Is there anything
Yeah,
to
I
compel
didn't
them
think
to
that- I didn't
force
think
it?
that ours, as it's set up now within our charter,
It-
had anything binding in it like that.
Yeah, I
That says
think
it has to go here.
But that's
Because I know
probably
the-
state law too, right? Because that's what makes the charter so hard to change. That even though you're reviewing it every 10 years, even though that states that in the charter, those changes still have to go to.
They
vote.
definitely go to
So-
open town meeting.
They go to the
But
ballot
I-
too, because if you remember, that's where the last charter review committee had suggested water sewer being elected, I think it was. and that got voted down. So that was one of their suggestions that got voted down at the polls.
Gotcha. So I thought there was some that didn't even make it to the ballot, like went to town meeting
Or maybe it got
and
killed
things got
there, yeah.
approved, but then it just died somewhere.
I think that was the most recent one.
That was the old.
Okay.
I don't think that was connected
That
to a
was the-
charter review committee.
That was the government study?
Yeah.
No, I think
Oh.
that was just somebody wanted to bring it forward and,
Oh,
yeah.
Well, because
Well,
there
I
was
believe the
also
old, I believe the old 4 one, they had discussions, I believe Mr. Gouveia was on it.
Yeah.
I forget the other few other ones that were on it, but.
It
they
didn't
had-
go anywhere.
Yeah, they ended up putting in front of the selectmen, the selectmen ended up not, it didn't go in front of town meeting or for.
But that wasn't a charter review. That was the
That
that was
was
the
a
government study.
yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I'm actually typing up, I was telling, before Bill gets here, I was gonna type up something just
Yeah,
so
is he
we could
coming?
have.
Like a little summary?
Yes, of just like the history, like sort of,
Yeah.
I was been working on it just to try to, in my own head, get it straight of all these different groups and different decisions, and it's interesting seeing, reading back to town meeting, old town meeting minutes, what the discussion was on some of these questions, so I
Yeah.
kind of captured some of that too. So at some point when I have time to get that all together, I can share
Janie,
it.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
Janie is right. The periodic review within the charter, it just says that the committee will make a report with recommendations to the town meeting concerning any proposed amendments which said committee may determine to be necessary or desirable. And
But they
that's
can't
it.
get approved unless it goes to town vote. I think that's more of a state law thing.
Okay.
I'm just
Because I
thinking,
mean,
It's
a charter
entirely
change.
I think it should just be more clear.
Right,
More clear that it should have, if you're gonna do that every 10 years, and I know they're not doing it this year because we're formed, but, there's a big difference between the process to get us here and do that. So
Right.
I feel like there's just more ability to get some changes implemented and bring it to the voters as opposed to just what's outlined in our
Yeah,
charter.
I agree, yeah.
I think, I totally agree, like, you need to give it some teeth to have the ability to, whether they voted for it or not, regardless of the question, but if somebody wants to have this committee formed or have a review part of our charter, they should be able to implement changes and bring them to the town. The town should maybe say, well, no, we're not gonna do that this time, you know what I mean? I think we need to make that very clear, that if, doesn't matter what the time frame is, doesn't matter when it happens, I just think that things change. And whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, there may be things that we look at the charter and say, it worked in 2019, it doesn't work in, 2030. And we need to go back in, or maybe we didn't get it right, or whatever it may be, that we need to go back in and change it and bring it to the voters and let them decide. If it isn't, then so be it, but there should be an option in there to actually be binding, whether the town elected plan, anybody on boards or elect, want it or not. It should be up to the voters on whether or not they should, it's their charter, it's for us,
Yeah, the only other thing notable in section 5 that I highlighted was that it only takes 500 people to recall positions, which I thought was kind of low in comparison to other recall language that we'd seen before, I think.
Especially given their
Yeah, but it was
population.
Yeah.
10 days for a.
And it was 125 people, they just increased
Yeah.
it to 500.
Yeah, that's, you would think it would be more of a percentage.
Right. Yeah.
That
Well,
language makes
that's
more
just
sense
to,
me.
that's just to get the petition going. You need 500 people. Then you need, I think it was 15% to actually recall them.
Yeah, I
Oh,
feel like there was a
15%,
process that
otherwise
was
shall be,
confused.
yep.
I wrote confused, I was confused by the whole process. I had to go through and read it a few times.
No, you're right, it's the 574 says 15%. All right, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So it's 500 is just,
500 is just to get a petition to recall people.
gotcha.
You're gonna do the 15% within 20 business days.
And if it's a
Yeah.
representative town meeting member, it drops down to 10 days.
Wow.
581
And
reflects,
Because it's a smaller population
what's
you're trying to
their-
get it from, too.
And what's their registered, what's their voters number?
56,000.
So how many of that is, do we know the registered voter?
I don't know
number?
what the registered voters are now, but
Even let's just say it's 30,000 registered voters. I mean,
That's
that's a
a-
lot of
a lot.
signatures. Within 20 business days.
Yeah,
I mean, I get it, you get the weekends, but that's, my guess would be is that if this is getting to the point of recall, that you're gonna have so many people knocking on the door to sign,
you get a serious issue, yeah.
that this shouldn't be an issue to get the numbers, but if it's just gonna be this random, personal attack on a person because somebody doesn't like them. It's gonna be, you're making it a little bit more difficult for somebody to go and get 15% of the voters in 20 business days.
Right, I think that's what they're trying to avoid is someone that just has an axe to
Frivolous.
grind versus.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with that. I mean,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I understand there always has to be an avenue to do this, but I think it needs to be a kind of a stakeholder on what we're looking at. I don't think it can just be as easy as going out and getting 500 signatures in 20 days, and that's,
There's definitely a process here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm more concerned, like, I don't, if it's really difficult to get somebody removed, I'm less concerned about that than, like, in their referendum 562, where it's 3%. I think that's where you don't want to make it impossible for the people to overrule
Yeah.
something that,
It's
So
gotta
that
be,
number to
it
me
still
is
has
not-
to be, it's gotta be enough to discourage frivolous requests,
Right.
but low enough that it can actually be accomplished in the time frame.
right? And I think especially for something like that, because again, the argument against anything besides open town meeting is you're taking the vote away from the people. So
Yeah.
you want to give a reasonable way for people to veto rights to, the decisions that are made by the representatives, whatever those may be.
Right.
I like it.
Anything else on Plymouth's charter? Okay, we doing on time?
So, my notes on Plymouth Charter say Special Act Town Charter.
Yes,
Normally you say strong town manager, weak town manager kind of a thing. Do we know what this,
this is a strong town manager.
strong town manager?
Yeah, it's actually a strong planning board, too.
Let's say the planning, yeah.
The planning board has, at least within the purview of their department, almost as much authority as a board of selectmen does. Which I don't necessarily. I'm happy to talk about it, I suppose, if the planning board comes in and says, yes, we want that. But it provides them the authority to veto the town manager's appointment to the planning director. It allows them to, some appointing authority for the open space committee and any other committees that they see fit. And the planning director reports to them, as opposed to the town manager. Well, I don't know, it's
Fully town?
unclear, it's not necessarily, it's they're responsible to the town manager, or to the planning director is how, or the planning director is responsible to the planning board is how it's written.
But isn't that how we have it too?
I don't,
I mean, our boards are, like our water sewer board is the boss of,
But they're appointed, like a water sewer commissioner is appointed by town manager.
right,
So
that
they-
part is different, but I think that in terms of, they respond to, who they answer to, I would think our planner would answer not just to Mike, but also to the planning board, correct?
I'm not sure.
Well, I think that's some of the confusion, even like if you go from ours with, say, the water sewer commission, is that he's getting pulled in two different directions. He's being responsible to answer to a water sewer commission board that's elected and not appointed by the town manager. And then you also have the other side of the personnel side where he's answering to the town manager. So if the planner's in the same thing, if where he's being appointed by the town manager, but he's going to the planning board meetings, if they're all on the same page, it's easy, you know what I mean? Or if planning's going well, if they're having problems with the water, what do you got? We obviously have a problem with water, so, I mean, that poor guy in the middle, whether, he's new or he's been here for a while, he's getting pulled in both different directions from each side of this because there's obviously an issue with water in this town.
I mean, I guess we'll wait to talk to Paul, but I don't get the impression that he's giving direction to the planning board. I mean, I don't get the direction, that he's getting direction from.
From the planning board.
I think it's the vice versa, that he's giving direction to the.
Well, I know in conservation, it is that way,
Yeah.
so I assumed planning board was the same. Because conservation, it's sort of like the director's work in some part, I mean, they can't fire them. I don't think they have that ability, but they do answer to them.
To the conservation committee.
Like the conservation agent, yeah.
But does
Has to respond
conservation,
to the Conservation Commission.
does the Conservation Commission say, maybe this is a question when she comes in, but when she meets with them, is she giving them saying, hey, this is what I have on the table, we need to vote on this? Or is it that they're telling her, this is
Both.
what?
She gives them guidance, but then they, she also, if they have a request, I kind of get the feeling that she should listen to their requests, They're sort of, they're that go-between with the public if the public has an issue. They bring it up with the Conservation Commission if they're not getting an answer that they like from the agent, and they can bring it up with the agent.
But even with planning, like say for instance, the planning director, I know this is probably questions for later, but like, planning director all of a sudden has potential for, a business or, something gonna go into town, and he gets the project rolling, and then it goes in front of the planning board. He may be able to show them what was kind of in the idea, but the planning board's gonna be able to vote on it, whether or not it falls within the, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Well, zoning too as well, but I think it's gonna mostly be a mutual thing of back and forth of, but do you have them be totally answering to the planning, So for instance,
Yeah, I just wonder how much different it is than, they spell it out a little bit more, but I wonder if it's any different in
Practice.
in practice than in every other town, in our town.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting once we see more. I was trying to figure out if this was it. Remember in our first meeting, Lauren Goldberg mentioned something about us, do we want a super planning board? And I've Googled that term, I can't even tell you how many times, and can't find any reference to it. So at some point, I'm gonna have to go back and ask her. But now I'm wondering if this
That's
is what
an
she's,
example of one.
that's an example of a super planning board where it's got, authority to veto a position and
Speaking of that, Lauren mentioned also that she'd give us a list of town meetings that we can attend, kind of see how they're run too.
she never did.
I mean, there's probably none happening right now, right? 'Cause
Right.
We've already missed the spring, so,
Yep.
but for the fall, maybe just put it on her radar again, like,
Okay.
let us know what come up in the fall.
Sure. Well, we could even do it next spring. We'll still be working.
Yeah, no, and I think we should probably do a sampling of both, right? Because the spring town meetings tend to be more budget setting for the year versus, I think the fall is kind of budget backfill time, I guess I would think of it as, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that all towns have a fall town.
The same structure?
Will have a fall town meeting, like Mansfield doesn't usually have a fall town.
They only
meeting.
have one.
Mm.
Gotcha.
I'm assuming we're probably more interested in town government structures that are different from our own. I think we're pretty comfortable with how open town meeting works.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think too, just,
And town council, if we found a town, they tend to run them as frequently as a board of selectmen meeting would run, so those are available at any time.
Yeah, do we know which towns have town council?
Yep. There's I can send you a spreadsheet. We've got every town in Massachusetts and exactly what they've
Did
got.
you pop that into
Oh.
Dropbox?
I did not, but I can.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind attending one if I have a chance. at
Sure.
some point.
Yeah, there was a couple of,
I haven't done the work to look to see who had what.
here's my to-do list.
we should just make a note too, in section 6 on Plymouth, they also have a Department of Public Works.
Yep.
I know we talked about that before, but it's not a huge article, there's only a few things in it, but it at least gives an outline of what the Department of Public Works will be responsible for. So I think if we see any more of those in any other town charters we review, I think it's important to kind of lump those together if we're gonna have a discussion on that later. But they at least outline like, as they'll be appointed by the town manager and kind of what the experience they're looking to have. I kind of, depending on whether or not we want to look more into this, I kind of agree with what Mike was saying about having somebody that's going to be a civil engineer, so they can take some of the expense out of going out of town every single time that we're gonna, to me, there's no point of putting a Department of Public Works person in there that's not gonna have the ability to do those small civil engineering plans in-house. I mean, right now, anything that we submit, we gotta go to a outside company, which I think is probably cost, so.
So that we have Dedham for next week?
Yes, I
Meeting?
think Sandy.
And this is
handed
an
it out.
example of what?
That's a good question.
Representative dating, I think.
It was in your packet you got tonight.
Yes, I do have it.
Yeah.
Dedham town meeting, yep.
Dedham is, let's see. Similar to Plymouth, it's a representative town meeting. They have a town manager, 5 selectmen, population similar to Norton, a little bit more, 24,700. It'd be interesting to see how they handle referendum issues.
I think there'll be a
If it's
good
any
one to-
different.
I think there'll be a good one to compare to Plymouth, just because it's similar in the, how they kind of form a government is.
So we've seen a couple of town meeting ones, representative town meeting ones. We haven't seen town council ones yet, right?
Not yet, nope.
Okay, just want to make sure that I'm not,
You haven't missed anything.
not getting to anything.
Okay. I lost my agenda. It's here somewhere. There it is. Any other business anybody wanted to raise? We've got Dedham for the next one, and I've lost the list of who we've got coming. Next meeting is August 5th. We'll have Dr. Baeta, Superintendent of Schools, Donna Palmer, Public Health Nurse, and Chris Zahner, the Health Agent. Sandy, did you anticipate taking the nurse and the health agent at the same time or separately?
I was thinking separately.
Okay.
I don't know that their jobs are that similar, are they?
We'll find out.
You wanna change the.
And Renee, I'm assuming Renee.
Are we gonna
I
go
don't even
bottom to
think
top
it's
again?
that is-
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
probably take them in
I'm just thinking
reverse
that-
order.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just
I
thinking the
think Baeta
superintendent's
first.
gonna be a little bit
Yeah.
more of a questions than the other two.
Yeah.
We'll take them in reverse order again, similar to what we did this week.
I don't think the public, either one with the public health or the health agent, I don't think that's gonna be an issue of which one we go, but like you said, for ease of thing, you just wanna reverse it, I think it would be probably.
Yeah. I think Chris's scope is a little bit probably broader than Donna Palmer's.
And then obviously superintendent's gonna.
Yeah.
I mean, 70%
Take
of the
up the-
budget, I think we're gonna have to have some questions for him at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I am not familiar at all with the way the school budget and process works, so
I don't think a lot.
I am not gonna be I'm not gonna be the one to drive those questions.
Well, it's interesting because they're part of the charter, but they're pretty separate.
They're always, well, did you notice in every charter that we've seen so far, and I just noticed it with Plymouth, their budget's always segregated. It's not something that Norton does
Right,
specifically.
right. That's more of like a state
That's
thing.
state.
I think
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
state
because
thing.
they get some state funded.
Right, but did you notice that some of the complaints that you hear, especially around like the override time, well, you know, they need to report to the town, their budget's separate, they do what they want, and, you know, we need to, you know, bring that within town hall. And it's
This-
not within our ability.
I think the superintendent's gonna be able to kind of fill us in more, but with the chapter 8 and what comes from the state and mandates from special needs and like that, I mean, Jeannie, I'm sure can, obviously, you can too, but I think there's a whole host of state laws and stuff like that that we can't even
Yeah, and
even
yeah,
begin to
I'm not
delve
sure how much
into.
authority we even have in our charter to really change a whole lot.
Exactly.
Because they really are, not just with their budget, but really are independent. I mean, the town manager does not hire him, right? Their school committee hires him, and so it's a different dynamic than what
Yeah.
we've been seeing.
Okay. So I'll be leaning on a couple of parents and teachers, please. Please and thank you. Bolster the questions other than my, what do you like about town government? Any other issues, anybody? Do we have any action items? I've got a bunch.
We do, yeah. So I have, Laura's you're gonna reach out to Dave about getting the survey live, you're gonna post on Norton Alerts. Janie's gonna share on Facebook groups. Denise, I wrote that down, I thought. Denise is going to contact, oh, it is right there, Beth
Beth.
about Senior Center. And I have a question mark. Who's going to email everybody about, that signed up for the public hearing? Was that you, Janie, or was that?
Yeah, who am I gonna email?
I mean, about giving them the
Questionnaire.
link?
I just haven't posted it yet. Is that what you're asking? How you
No,
put it in
like you
Dropbox?
had suggested,
Oh.
that everybody who signed up, to be alerted on the, the public hearing, get a personal,
Yeah.
link out, so,
Sure,
okay.
I can do that.
I've got the website. And I'll talk to Lucia about
The mail.
putting yeah, just see if, even if it's just taping an envelope to the wall.
No, with the survey though, we're gonna wait until we go live, right?
Yes.
Or we're not gonna preview it. Like, we're not gonna go out and say, hey, we have a survey, it's great, it's coming in 1 week. We wait until we're ready.
Yes.
Yeah,
and then we
just launch it.
Post it, okay.
Yeah,
All right,
don't give them a chance to forget about it.
yeah.
Yeah, so maybe even if, once Laura sends out the Norton Alert email, you could just forward it to
Those
anybody on those,
people on
that
that
list,
list,
in
yeah.
case you missed it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh.
and I will post that on the Dropbox tonight, everybody who signed in there. But I did type them up so that it'd just be easy to put in one
Okay,
email.
great.
Okay. Anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second?
Adjourned.
Go Shane, how you been?